Okay, so we are continuing on from the third remedial into the fourth one. So it's the same question, except now I'm doing part B. Okay, so part B is a 15-mark essay question, right? And then 15 marks is 10 plus 5. 5 you means you need an evaluation. You need to have evaluation going on. And then 10 marks will be your R1 and your R2. Okay, so here they ask you to evaluate the policies that are adopted by the Singapore government to correct these sources of market failure. So I don't really remember, but in part A, we identified two sources of market failure. The first one is imperfect information, because people don't know what's good for them. They don't go for preventive healthcare, meaning that you don't go for your checkups. Don't let the doctor recommend you certain diet or lifestyle changes, right? And then we also have third parties who are affected. We mentioned that firms also benefit when you are healthier, right? So in this case, there will be positive externalities. So these are the two sources of market failure we identified in part A. So part B asks us to follow up by looking at policies. Okay, and they want us to correct these sources of market failure. So we're going to have R1 and R2. Oops. So actually the R1 R2 is quite easy. So R1 would be just first policy you're going to explain, and then the second policy to explain. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to align my policies to the source of market failure. So if there's imperfect information, I will just run a campaign. Or if you're more used to this other word, we also call it public education. Okay, then for positive externalities, I'm just going to subsidize it. It's the easiest one to explain. Okay, so that's going to be my policy 1 and policy 2. Okay, so this is a 15-mark question. So it's 10 plus 5. Now, I don't know whether you remember, but I also mentioned in class that actually for policy questions where the requirement is like this, it's very easy to evaluate. So what we're going to do, we're going to have an EV1 talking about the limitations of campaigns. And then EV2, we're going to have the limitations of subsidies. Limitation also. Okay, so we're going to go R1, EV1, R2, EV2, like so. And then finally, we're going to have the main conclusion. Okay, so let's begin with policy 1, which is campaigns. Okay, so so I mentioned this, right? So the way you want to explain campaign, I'm just going to put everything out first. The way you want to explain campaigns, so this is campaigns, okay? Or public education. So if you look at all the answer keys, right, when they explain campaigns or public education, they always do it like this. What is this? They will use their own words first. In other words, you have to smoke a bit. So for campaigns, right, you really need to give examples and smoke a bit, right? So here what I'm saying is that there are road shows, and if you know about the names of the road shows, you can write it. If you don't know, it's okay. You can just, based on your own life experience, what do you see, what kind of campaigns do you run? Do we have YouTube ads? If so, you can write it down. Do we have, if you're on the car in the morning, you listen to the radio, you will know we also have health campaigns on the radio. So you can write and modify using your own words, really. You don't have to adhere to this. Okay? So what I tell students is that this first chunk where you use your own words, it sounds more like PW than econs, and it really does. Okay? So just elaborate using examples. Doesn't have to be specific, like all this screen for life, let's beat diabetes. Don't have to be so specific. If you know, good. You don't know, it's okay. Use your own words. Okay? Don't have to adhere. So the first part is to use your own words, right? Second part is important. You need to link to the diagram. So after you use your own words, second part is to link to the diagram. So what's the campaign going to do? So this is what we drew in Remedial 3, right? So there is imperfect information because MPP perceived is less than MPP actual. So when you run the campaign, you tell people, hey, can you please go for your checkup, because have you heard going for your checkup is so and so awesome. What you're doing is that you're shifting this perceived benefit up towards the actual benefit. That's what you're doing. So you don't have to draw a new diagram. You just have to tell the examiner, hey, look what I drew. It's going to shift it from here to here. Okay? So it increases consumers' willingness to consume healthcare. it closes the information gap and it causes it to shift. And when it does so, there will be a new equilibrium Q star and the initial welfare loss will be eliminated. So link to diagram. So for campaigns, the way to do it for campaigns is to use your own words first. This is the smoky part. Okay, if you can, you give specific examples. After you do that, you link to the diagram. So from what you drew, just refer to it. Oh, it shifts like this. I got a new Q. Have you heard? This will eliminate the weight loss. Okay, this is R1. So after you do that, I mentioned to you that actually for these 15 mark questions on when there's policy 1 and policy 2, EVs are very easy to do, so you should do that. So you just need to give me the limitations of the campaign. So I got 2 limitations here that I memorized. One is that it takes a very long time. When you run campaign, it takes a very long time. So I've seen the campaign so many times and I haven't gone for my checkup yet. It takes time for people to adjust their mindsets. If someone doesn't want to take the vaccine, any amount of campaign is going to take a very long time to get to him or her. Right? People have their own perceptions and they are motivated by their relatives more than the campaigns. So one is that it takes a long time. Okay. Second thing is that it requires money. Right? When you run money, there's definitely alternative users, and by doing so, you will incur opportunity costs. Okay. So again, for the policy, you use your own words first. Link to diagram. Okay. Then for limitations, you can talk about time. You can talk about money. So that's the first policy campaign.